The galaxy's most feared assassin had a rule: never, under any circumstances, accept a human contract. Not because they were hard to kill, but because it was never just about the target. It was always about the bait. The Velvet Nebula was the kind of place where names weren't spoken, only whispered. A bar for those who dealt in endings, not introductions. Smoke curled under dim amber lights, hiding faces better than any hood. The air tasted of scorched metal and expensive fear. Drex Talvor stepped inside and the room went quiet. 6 eyes swept the chamber, each moving independently, cataloging every exit, every hand too close to a concealed weapon. His reputation arrived before him, pressing against the back of every spine. He didn't walk so much as glide, all predatory grace wrapped in a battered flight coat. At the counter, he ordered warm milk. The bartender didn't laugh. No one did. Last being who had, bled out on the floor before finishing the joke. Drex wasn't the largest killer in the galaxy, or the fastest. But he'd taken contracts most wouldn't touch, survived fights that made military tacticians shake their heads. The only jobs he turned down were human contracts. Not sometimes. Not most of the time. Always. In the far booth, 3 younger assassins leaned in over steaming bowls of predator stew. Their voices were pitched just low enough to be rude but loud enough to be heard. "Got a human bounty," one said, mandibles clacking in amusement. "Soft target. Diplomat. Fringe station. Easy credits." "They bruise like fruit," another agreed. "Not even armored." The third laughed. "Maybe I'll take the ears as a trophy." Drex's stool creaked as he turned. His voice was calm, conversational, which was worse than a threat. "Cancel it." The table went silent. The youngest forced a grin. "You afraid of them?" Drex took a slow sip. "I'm afraid of what happens after." He set the glass down with deliberate care. "You hunt a human, you hunt the whole species." They stared. One snorted. "They're fragile. Primitive." Drex's tone didn't change. "They're polite, until they're not. And by the time they're not, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet." He turned back to the bar, but the memories stirred like ash in his chest. The one job he'd walked away from. The one name that still made his spines itch. Elias Kane. Officially, trade delegate to the Irid cluster. Unofficially, something far sharper. Years ago, Drex had taken the job, thinking it would be a short stalk, a clean kill. Kane was stationed on a mid-tier diplomatic hub, minimal security, public schedule. Drex had infiltrated easily, finding the human alone in a quiet meeting room. The man had looked up, smiled as though greeting an old friend, and said, "Tea?" Drex had declined. Politely. He'd drawn his blade. Kane had poured a second cup. Every corridor Drex tried after that curved back to Kane's room. The layout shifted beneath his feet, locks clicking in the distance. It wasn't force, it was design. He'd been funneled without realizing it. Kane never raised a weapon. Never raised his voice. Just smiled, and said, "You'll leave now. And when the board is set, we'll speak again." Drex had obeyed without knowing why. Back in the Velvet Nebula, the door hissed open. A courier drone zipped to Drex's table and dropped a sealed datapad. He recognized the encryption before the seal dissolved, high-level syndicate coding, the kind reserved for jobs worth buying a planet with. Target: Commander Julia Hart. Species: human. Location: Mining Outpost 42X, Asteroid Belt Sector. Bounty: record-breaking. His upper right eye twitched. He set the pad down and finished his milk. Around him, the bar's noise returned in hesitant waves. A Uruk brawler bragged about a planetary siege. A Shalti trader recited poetry about tides. None of it mattered. The contract burned in his mind. Humans. Again. Vrak's prime streets were a tangle of neon-lit walkways and shadowed alleys. Drex moved through them with the ease of a shadow, slipping between streams of alien traffic. His ship, lean, scarred, predatory, waited in a private hangar. He stood at the foot of the ramp, datapad still warm in his palm. He'd said no to a dozen human contracts since Kane. But this wasn't an unknown diplomat. Julia Hart was a military officer. If the syndicate wanted her dead, there was more in play than a mining claim. The bounty was obscene. Enough to erase debts, buy protection for decades, fund disappearances. Enough to make any assassin consider the risk worth taking. Almost. A voice behind him. Take it. Drex turned, finding a Vori broker in an embroidered coat leaning against a support strut. The man's eyes glittered with the kind of greed that got people buried in anonymous graves. You know who she is, Drex said. I know she's human. And I know you're the only one who might reach her before the others. Others? The broker smiled. The contract's gone public. Drex's lower set of eyes closed slowly. Multiple hunters meant noise, chaos. And if Hart was worth this much, she'd be expecting them. Which meant traps. Which meant Kane's smile all over again. He keyed the ship's hatch. Stay out of my way. In orbit, Vrax shrank to a jeweled sphere. Drex plotted a course toward the belt, calculating every possible entry vector. He preferred clean work, in and out, no witnesses, no mess. But with humans, the mess wasn't optional. It was built into the job. He told himself he wasn't taking the contract. He was investigating. Confirming Hart was a problem worth avoiding. That was all. The NAV computer disagreed, locking in jump coordinates. The stars stretched and folded, swallowing him whole. Hours later, the mining outpost came into view, a cluster of dull metal modules clinging to a spinning asteroid, floodlights cutting through the dust. Cargo haulers drifted lazily between docking arms. No visible defenses. No warships. Which meant they were there, hidden. Humans loved hiding teeth. Drex docked, disembarked, and stepped into recycled air thick with mineral grit. The docking bay was quiet except for the hiss of compressors. She was waiting for him. Julia Hart looked exactly like the briefing photo. Short hair swept back, posture relaxed, smile warm. She wore standard mining station fatigues, nothing to mark her as military. Her hands were empty, but the way she stood made him think she didn't need them full. Mr. Talvor, she said, as if greeting a scheduled guest. You made good time. Every instinct told him to walk away. Every instinct also told him he'd already walked into something. How do you know my name? Hart's smile didn't change. Because I make it my business to know who's coming for tea. Drex's jaw tightened. I didn't come for tea. That's what Kane said, she replied. Before we spoke. Her words dropped into him like cold metal, sinking fast. He didn't reach for a weapon. Not yet. He'd learned that much from Kane. Humans didn't start by shooting. They started by talking. And somehow that was worse. Hart stepped aside. Shall we? I've set out 2 cups. Drex followed her into the station, every sense stretched thin, tasting the air for the moment when polite became lethal. And in the back of his mind, he knew the rule was about to be broken. The corridors of Mining Outpost 42X were narrow, walls lined with dull plating scuffed by decades of work. Overhead lights hummed softly, throwing pale halos onto the grit-coated floor. Drex walked half a step behind Julia Hart, silent, his 6 eyes sweeping every junction. She moved like someone with nowhere urgent to be, measured, almost casual, but every turn she took was deliberate. Twice she chose a path that looped them past mirrored panels, each giving her a glimpse of him without turning her head. They stepped into a small lounge, its centerpiece an old metal table set for 2. A steaming pot sat between mismatched cups. The faint scent of roasted beans lingered in the air. Hart gestured to the chair opposite hers. Sit. You'll want this fresh. I don't drink human coffee, Drex said. Good, she replied, pouring him a cup anyway. Means I get more. He stayed standing, scanning the corners. You know why I'm here. Hart cradled her mug. Everyone knows. Syndicate bounties aren't exactly subtle. You're not concerned? Her eyes held his without a flicker. Concern is wasted energy. I prepare instead. She took a slow sip. Right now, you're deciding whether to reach for a weapon. Don't. Because you'll kill me first? Because I'm not the only one in the room. Drex turned slightly. A shadow shifted in the far corner, a human security officer, leaning against the wall with the kind of stillness that meant training, not laziness. Hart set her cup down. Let's skip the warm-up. The contract was bait. You walked right into it. I don't take human jobs. Yet here you are. She smiled, but the warmth didn't reach her voice. Which means either you've grown careless, or you're curious. I came to confirm the risk. And he didn't answer. Hart leaned back. The others won't be as cautious. We're expecting them soon. That's the point. Get you all in one place, off the board in a single stroke. Drex's eyes narrowed. Why me? I could have ignored it. Kane predicted you wouldn't. The name landed like a weight. Drex kept his voice even. You know him. Worked with him for years. He said you'd either run or walk right into my kitchen. Welcome. The lounge door slid open. 3 figures entered, all assassins he recognized. A Vorik sniper, a hulking Uruk blade merc, and a SAR infiltrator. Each glanced at him, then at Hart. She waved them toward the table. You're all here for me. Congratulations. You've saved me the trouble of sending invitations. The Uruk grunted. You think we won't just kill you? Hart poured more coffee. You can try. But you'll die before you finish the thought. The Vorik sneered. You're outnumbered. Hart gestured to the walls. By the way, the room is locked. Air scrubbers are cycling slower now. That gives us 20 minutes before oxygen dips low enough to make your hands shake. The assassins froze. Drex noticed none of them reached for weapons. They'd seen something in her eyes. Not bluff, but calculation. She stood. You all have the same problem. Underestimating humans. You see skin instead of scales, bone instead of armor, and you think we're fragile. That mistake is expensive. Hart walked to the viewport. Beyond, the asteroid belt glimmered in scattered light. Out there, my fleet sits in silence. No active signals. No visible hulls. Just shadows tucked into the rock. You can't detect them, but they've been tracking you since you entered this system. The Saw hissed softly. Why lure us? Because the Syndicate needs a message. She turned, meeting each gaze. The message is that targeting humans costs more than they can pay. Drex crossed his arms. You plan to kill everyone who takes a contract on you? Not kill, Hart said. Convert. Survivors spread fear faster than corpses. The Vorik scoffed. Fear doesn't last. It does, Hart replied, if you seed it deep enough. Ask the Irid cluster what happened when they burned a human trade convoy. 6 months later, they'd signed unconditional treaties. A low tone pulsed from the wall console. Hart tapped it, listening. First wave's here. 3 ships, fast, armed, overconfident. The Uruk shifted uneasily. And us? Hart's smile returned. You're staying right here, out of the way. She looked at Drex. Or, if you're smarter than most, you'll help. I don't work for humans. You work for survival, she corrected. Which, today, is the same thing. The floor trembled faintly as the outpost's hidden batteries spun up. Hart glanced at the viewport. They'll expect a quick strike, maybe a firefight. What they'll get is silence, then sudden absence. The Vorik frowned. Absence. They won't even know they're dead. That's the trick. Let them think they're winning, right until the hull cracks. Drex studied her. She wasn't bluffing. Everything from the locked doors to the oxygen pacing to the fleet outside was part of a structure, layered, precise. It was the same invisible net Kane had woven around him years ago, only bigger. Hart caught his look. Now you understand why I'm still alive. The Uruk finally spoke. What if we refuse to cooperate? Hart poured the last of the coffee. Then you'll still be here when the next wave arrives. And they'll assume you were working with me. No one answered. Hart stepped close to Drex, her voice dropping just for him. Kane told me you learn fast. I'm giving you the same choice he gave you. Leave alive, or stay and see how humans end a fight. You think I'll carry your message? I know you will. And they won't believe you, until they should have. The wall console chimed again. Hart tapped it. A calm voice reported, first wave neutralized. No survivors. Hart smiled faintly. That's the easy part done. Now comes the lesson. She turned to the assassins. You're going to watch. You're going to remember. And then you're going to leave with just enough oxygen and just enough fear to make this worth the trouble. Drex didn't move toward the door. Neither did the others. The lock's quiet hum was a reminder that leaving wasn't an option until she allowed it. Through the viewport, a shadow shifted among the asteroids, a sharp, angular silhouette sliding into position. It looked like a piece of the belt until it moved again, and the faint outline of human warship hull plating caught the light. Hart watched it with the ease of someone seeing a familiar friend. You've all made the mistake of thinking this is a mining station, she said. It's not. It's the first tile in a much larger board. Her gaze returned to Drex. And you're standing on it. The warship silhouette held its place among the asteroids, motionless, patient. From a distance, it might have been a shard of rock. Up close, it bristled with hidden weapon ports. Drex stood at the viewport, measuring the distance to freedom. The outpost felt smaller now, its walls of skin stretched over a predator's ribs. Hart moved between the console and the table, issuing instructions with the calm rhythm of someone checking grocery lists, not battle plans. Second wave, she asked into the comm. 6 ships. Mixed models. They're spreading out, the voice replied. Hart's lips curved faintly. Good. They'll feel safer that way. The Vorik sniper shifted restlessly. You could just destroy them now. Hart poured herself water. Quick kills don't echo. Let them think they're winning. The Uruk rumbled low in his throat. They'll notice the first wave is gone. Not before they're too close to leave, Hart said. Drex studied her hands. Steady, deliberate. No wasted motion. Every instruction she gave was a thread in a web. He recognized the pattern. Isolate, misdirect, close. Kane had used it on him. Hart wielded it like an art form. She caught his gaze. Still thinking about leaving? I'm considering how much air is left in this room. Enough, she said simply. The comm crackled again. Targets within engagement range. Hart glanced at Drex. Watch closely. This is why you don't hunt humans. The viewport darkened, filters adjusting for the flare of sudden thruster burns. The hidden warship shifted its position, revealing 2 more behind it. Not mining vessels. Lean, angular ships built for pursuit and precision strikes. Missiles didn't launch immediately. Instead, small drones detached, each disappearing into the asteroid shadows. The Vorik frowned. Why send toys first? Hart didn't look at him. Because they're listening. Mapping. Feeding positions to the fleet. If you fire blind, you waste ammunition. We prefer not to waste. Drex saw it then, the movement of the second wave slowing, adjusting course. They'd spotted nothing, yet they reacted as though uneasy. He'd felt that same unease once, in Kane's presence. The sense of being seen from all angles, measured against a scale you didn't understand. Hart leaned over the console. Begin net sequence. The warships fired not at the enemy, but into the belt itself. Explosive charges burst in silent flashes, sending debris spinning. The asteroid shifted, subtly narrowing the space around the approaching ships. The Uruk exhaled sharply. You're hurting them. Exactly, Hart said. We let them pick the path we want them to take, while they think it's their choice. On the viewport, the Syndicate ships tightened formation, navigating through the gaps. Their comms would be filled with confident chatter, oblivious that their every adjustment matched Hart's plan. Drex spoke without looking at her. And then... Hart's eyes stayed on the display. And then the gate closes. The drones reappeared in sudden bursts of light, each releasing a cloud of metallic shards. The clouds drifted, invisible until the enemy flew into them. Hull plating sparked. Navigation arrays failed. One ship spun, colliding with another in a slow, deadly dance. Hart's voice was steady. 2 down. 4 to go. The Vorik watched in silence now, the mocking edge gone from his face. The SAR infiltrator's tail coiled tightly, eyes fixed on the screen. Hart continued issuing orders. Push them to Sector 7. That cluster hides the missile silos. Minutes later, the enemy reached the designated sector. The asteroids there were oddly uniform. Too perfect. Panels peeled back, revealing the black mouths of launch tubes. Fire, Hart said. The missiles didn't roar. In space, they were silent spears. They struck with precision, detonating inside shields weakened by the earlier debris strikes. 3 ships vanished in blossoming light. The last tried to break away. Let it go, Hart instructed. We want someone to tell the story. The room was quiet except for the hum of the life support systems. Hart turned from the viewport. Questions? The Vorik swallowed. You used us as bait. Correct, she said without hesitation. Better you draw their attention than my fleet. The Uruk stepped forward. You're not a soldier. You're something else. I'm a problem solver, Hart replied. And this problem isn't solved yet. She turned to Drex. You see now why Kane let you live? Drex's voice was low. He wanted me to remember. Exactly. Survivors plant seeds. Dead enemies rot quietly. The Syndicate will hesitate now, but they'll test us again. When they do, you'll tell them what happens next. The comm chimed. Scouts report 3rd wave inbound. Heavier ships. 20 minutes out. Hart's smile sharpened. Perfect. They'll think they're reinforcing the survivors. Instead, they'll fly into an empty system. The Tsar tilted his head. Empty? Hart nodded. By the time they arrive, we'll be gone. The belt will be mined, every approach mapped. We'll watch them search for ghosts. Drex understood the real weapon. Not the fleet, not the missiles, but the pause. Make the enemy waste time, bleed resources, fight shadows. It was a war fought in hesitation and doubt. Hart moved to the door. You'll all leave in 10 minutes. Separate ships. Random courses. And when they ask about this station, she let the sentence hang. The Vorik finished it quietly. We tell them it wasn't worth the contract. She looked at Drex last. And you? I'll tell them the truth. Hart smiled, approving. They won't believe you. They didn't believe me about Kane either. Good, she said. Fear works best when it's dismissed as rumor. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Oxygen flow increased. The air felt cooler. Hart stepped aside, letting them pass. Drex paused at the threshold. What's really here? This station isn't just bait. Hart's expression didn't change. No. But you'll see the rest when it matters. As he walked back to his ship, Drex glanced once more at the viewport. The human fleet was already moving, vanishing into the asteroid shadows. When the third wave arrived, there would be nothing left but drifting rock and unanswered questions. He understood, with a weight in his chest, that Hart hadn't merely beaten the Syndicate here, she'd rearranged the board entirely. And every piece was still moving. The assassin's ship drifted in perfect silence, its black hull blending with the void. No lights, no beacon, nothing to show it was even there. Across the comms, a dozen alien voices whispered to one another, each in their own tongue, yet all saying the same thing: this is a mistake. On the far side of the table, in the conference chamber aboard the orbital station, Commander Halley sat perfectly still. Her uniform was spotless. The slight upward curl of her lips was polite, friendly even, but her eyes didn't blink. The assassin, cloaked in shimmering adaptive armor, finally spoke. "You know why I'm here." His voice was low, calculated. "Oh, I know," Halley replied, leaning forward just enough to make the light catch her face. "You've been offered more than your usual fee. Enough credits to buy a moon, I hear." The assassin didn't deny it. "And you know I turned it down." Her smile sharpened. "That's the part one find fascinating. The universe's deadliest assassin, turning down a human contract? Tell me, why is that?" Every alien diplomat in the chamber leaned forward, eager for the answer. The assassin's gaze swept the room before he finally answered. "Because I like breathing." A ripple of confusion ran through the gathered envoys. The Kelver representative tilted his crystalline head. "Explain." The assassin didn't look at him. He looked only at Halley. "You're predators. You smile too much. You talk like diplomats, but everything about you says hunter. Every species I've killed for had a pattern, a limit. But humans—" He stopped himself, glancing to the side as if weighing whether to go on. Halley didn't move, but her tone softened. "Finish that thought." The assassin's jaw tightened. "Humans are the only species I've studied where the prey sets the trap before the predator even decides to attack. I've watched your wars. You play patient, let everyone think they've outsmarted you, and then you close the jaws." Halley's voice was light, conversational. "That sounds like paranoia." "It's survival instinct," the assassin snapped. Then, more quietly, "And I don't kill things that hunt me back after they're dead." The room went silent. One of the alien envoys, a tall, gold-scaled Ortiz, leaned forward, hissing. "Are you implying humans take vengeance beyond death?" The assassin's visor tilted toward him. "I've seen it. A mercenary squad took a human contract. Simple elimination. Easy payday. They completed the job. 2 months later, every member of that squad vanished. Their employers too. Not just killed, erased. Bank accounts drained. Families relocated under false pretenses. Entire digital footprints burned out. Like they never existed." Halley's fingers tapped the table once, a soft sound that somehow cut through the silence. "I suppose," she said, "you think that was intentional?" "I know it was." The assassin's voice was cold. "I tracked the data wipes back as far as I could. They led to an automated relay station on an asteroid, with human security protocols." The alien envoys shifted uncomfortably. Halley finally stood, slow and deliberate. "You think you've uncovered some great human secret, don't you? That you're warning the galaxy?" She walked toward the assassin with unhurried steps, her boots echoing on the polished floor. "Let me explain something since you've been so curious. The room seemed to shrink around her. We don't start fights. We don't even mind losing the first round. We like our enemies confident, comfortable, predictable. And when the moment comes, she stopped directly in front of the assassin, voice dropping to a whisper. We don't just end the game. We end them. All traces, all memory, gone. The assassin's breathing quickened despite the armor. Hallie straightened, addressing the room. This is why the assassin won't take human contracts. It's not loyalty. It's not honor. It's math. He's calculated the odds, and he knows the truth. If you target a human, you won't just fail, you won't survive the aftermath. One of the younger envoys tried to bluster. Are you threatening the council? Hallie's smile returned, warm and utterly insincere. Of course not. I'm just explaining why some rules aren't written down. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency shutters slammed down, sealing the exits. The lights shifted to a deep crimson. Hallie didn't even flinch. Status, she said calmly into her comm. Targets acquired, came the reply from somewhere unseen. The assassin froze. What did you? Hallie's eyes locked on his visor. You weren't summoned here for a negotiation. You were summoned here to keep you in one place while we dismantle the organization that hired you. She stepped aside, letting the envoys see the holoscreen flicker to life. Fleet movements, encrypted transmissions intercepted, and entire planetary networks going dark. His envoy gasped. That's impossible. That's half the Narrow Syndicate's core worlds. Correction, Hallie said, her tone razor-sharp. That was half the Narrow Syndicate's core worlds. The assassin's voice was barely audible. You set a trap for them. Hallie tilted her head, amused. No. We set it years ago. They just happened to step into it today. Outside, through the narrow viewport, a massive shadow moved, Earth's fleet, emerging from a hidden slipstream corridor. Silent. Precise. Every ship's weapons powered but not firing, as if daring anyone to speak first. Hallie clasped her hands behind her back. Now, if there's no further business, I'll ask you all to send a very clear message to your governments. Humanity has no interest in expansion. But if provoked, she let the silence hang. We don't forgive. We don't forget. And we don't stop. The assassin said nothing. For the first time in his career, he didn't know if he was the predator or the prey.